The Connor Lewis podcast is brought to you by Floatwear. Whether you're looking for new gear for the indoor season, maybe you're doing club, or maybe you're anxiously awaiting outdoor season like me, Floatwear has got the best volleyball gear around. And the great news is that if you use my code FloatLewis2 at checkout, you can get 10% off your order. Thank you to Floatwear. All right, got a great episode ahead of us. I talked to Stephen Scheppner. We talk about the Super Bowl a couple days too late probably, but it's a great episode nonetheless. We got a lot of great moments in there talking about Drake May, talking about Sam Darnold and his legacy, Kenneth Walker, what's he going to do this offseason, the halftime show, what does the halftime show look like next year? All this and more will be answered on this episode of the Connor Lewis podcast. Now let's play the intro. All right, we're here with Stephen Scheppner. We're talking about the Super Bowl. Stephen, what's up? Thank you for joining us, man. I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you reaching out to me, man. This is a cool opportunity.
Yeah, you may all know Stephen. If you don't know him, he is the host of the returning Scheppner Sports Podcast. Pretty good. I will say I have listened to an episode or two just to get an idea of your vibe, and I gotta say it's very enjoyable to listen to. It's on Spotify, right?
Yeah.
Is it just Spotify or is it on YouTube?
Yeah, we're gonna try to make the switch to Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts here soon. I don't know when that transition is gonna happen. My brother's in the process of possibly returning back to a job of his, and I'm in the process of trying to graduate with my MBA. It's just trying to figure out when we're gonna start again, but it should be soon.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to continue to hear more about that. And thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining me in a very busy schedule, I'm sure. So I appreciate you taking the time. Let's just jump right into the Super Bowl. First reactions, initial reactions that you had coming right off the game?
So the first thing, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later when we talk about Super Bowl MVP, the first thing I immediately thought was this was the best case scenario for Kenneth Walker and the worst case scenario for the Seattle Seahawks. Walker becoming a free agent after just having over 200 yards in his last two games when it kind of felt like he didn't do that all year without Zach Charbonnet being around. Best case for him. So much money at stake now for Kenneth Walker, anywhere from probably realistically 3 to 8 now that he might get, rather than just kind of signing a Javonte Williams-esque contract that he was in the market for. But for the Seahawks, now you have to figure out what you're going to do at running back if he gets paid. Is it worth bringing him back, even though you have Charbonnet still around? George Halani's had a little bit of promise, but is that the two backs you're going to want to have come off the Super Bowl? And for the Patriots side, is this the worst team we've seen in a Super Bowl in the last 30 years?
I had that, actually. Yeah, I was thinking about this going into this. My knee-jerk reaction was the Rams in the second Rams-Patriots Super Bowl, the one led by Jared Goff.
Yep.
That one stuck out to me just looking at the history. It's a really good question. I think, like, living in New England, you're surrounded by biased New England fans. It's going to happen when you live in this area. So whenever I bring up the schedule, which is a legitimate factor going to the Super Bowl, bringing up that schedule, it's a historically simple, very easy schedule. They catch a few breaks, like the Chargers' offensive line being historically bad.
Terrible.
Stroud putting up one of the worst performances I've seen from a quarterback in the last 10 years since I've watched football.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bo Nix, the injury. And put that all aside, the Patriots caught so many breaks this playoffs, and I feel like that luck really caught up to them. And I think this was bound to happen. I think Seattle was only favorited when I was putting together the outline by like 4.5 points, and that seemed really low. I don't know if you agree with that, but I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on if this is the worst team to go to the Super Bowl.
I don't know if there's another that you can really make the comparison to. That Rams team was really bad. They only put up 3 points that Super Bowl, I believe. But that defense was so good for the Rams, they held the Pats to 13. So,
and they caused Brady not getting a Super Bowl MVP. I only got it that year. So
so that at least has something to show for the Rams. I mean, this Pats defense was pretty good this year. was pretty good this year. But if you match it up with the team that they just played, it levels to it. And other teams that really just didn't really score in the Super Bowl. I mean, the Broncos had 8 points one year against Seattle. They got blown out, but I would rather take that team on paper over this Patriots team. So I think if you really look at everything, not necessarily having someone that we view as a true number one wide receiver anymore on offense, because I'm sorry, Diggs just is not that anymore. Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson not being the 1-2 complementary pieces that we thought they could be after the Stevenson injury and Henderson showing what he can do after he went back to number 2. It just was not the same. So I think I would have to look back in like the 90s teams and stuff like that. But like I'm a Cowboys fan, and so like the 90s is the last time I ever felt any glory. But I don't think any of those 90s teams were really worse than these Patriots were. And look, I don't want to. It feels like I'm coming out here and just talking crap on them, right? Like they still were 14-3. They still had to win games. Like it's not necessarily easy being favorited in almost every game you play. You still have to win the football game, and they did that. But it just was the easiest schedule they'll ever have, and it's going to be a difficult road for them to come back.
Yeah, and I think I read, and I know that we're still figuring out stuff. I've already read an article about the way too early power rankings for next season. So people are already kind of overreacting. But from what I've read, the Patriots are going to have one of the hardest schedules next season. Again, they're going to have cap space. They have some draft picks. So they can make adjustments, especially the offensive line. I think that's the thing they need to tinker with, to be kind, the most. Now, I wanted to ask you this because I was thinking about this morning, just looking over the outline. I have a few examples, but do you think there's ever been a team in the Super Bowl that the haters were the most right about? In the sense that the haters called out this team, they made the Super Bowl, and they were right when we got there. So I'll give you 3 examples I have, besides this Patriots team. Last year, with the Chiefs, people called out the bad offense, and they were proven correct. The Eagles won 40-22 in that game. The defense was a major question mark for the Chiefs. The haters were correct. Super Bowl 31, which we're going back to the 90s now. The Packers were favored over the Patriots by 14 points, and they were correct. And if you think that's bad, I got an even worse one for you. Super Bowl 29, the 49ers were favored over the Chargers by 18.5 points, and they were correct. Niners won 49-26 in a Super Bowl in the 90s. That doesn't even feel like a real score. No. So my question is this the most the haters were right Super Bowl we've had?
It's so hard with some haters in sports because a lot of the hate comes from previous greatness. Like the Chiefs, yes, that defense was bad. That was the worst Chiefs defense they've had. It was worse than this year's Chiefs defense, and the Chiefs didn't even make the playoffs. So the hate about the defense was completely right, but a lot of the hate was skewed more towards Patrick Mahomes. And then all the Pats hate this year, I think this is the most true definition of hating because of past success. Yes, people were right about the weakest schedule. The offensive line was not very great. But more people, and I go to school in Western New York right now. Bills fans. I'm surrounded by them. I never hated the Bills until I started living in Western New York. But when listening to Bills fans talk about why they hate the Pats, it was just, they're back. Oh, they're back. So it's just past trauma that they've brought up in the hate rather than real statistical stuff. And yes, the only argument against them that a lot of fans could bring up was the strength and schedule. So right, yeah, technically, The haters were right. But it just kind of happens. Like they caught lightning in a bottle and got there. But they also matched up with a team that I think people aren't talking about enough as being one of the greatest teams we've ever seen. This defense is historically good in Seattle.
Yeah.
And the offense was also historically good in Seattle. This offense flowed better than almost any Seahawks team I remember under Russ.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think we kind of took it for granted because the number one thing that sticks out, and I haven't seen like any coverage of the Seahawks compared to the Patriots, and a part of that's because I live in New England, fair, but even nationally, I think it's just because the Seahawks don't have a quote unquote like typical superstar. Like they don't have a guy that's the face of a franchise. Like I do the mom test, so to speak. Would your mom know a player on this team? I think most moms would know that Drake May exists just because of his coverage, especially in New England. Do you think your mom could name one Seahawks player right now?
She could.
Okay.
She could name two, and I'll tell you the two.
Okay.
I'm an Ohio State fan, so she watches Ohio State games with me when I'm in town. She knows who JSN is. I will say that. The other one, the only reason she knows the other one, so obviously I'm a Cowboys fan. My brother, who I do the other podcast with, is a Cowboys fan. And we were home after DeMarcus Lawrence did his interview saying he felt like he needed to go somewhere to win a Super Bowl. My brother and I clowned him. We made fun of him so much, saying, yeah, I know you probably weren't going to win one in Dallas, but Seattle, that's where you choose to go to try to say that afterwards. And so she knows who that is just because we were making fun of him for being a former Cowboy and saying he could win in Seattle. And boy, do I have to eat one on that.
Yeah. I think that was like kind of an under-discussed storyline, was that he did win the one. I hadn't heard anything about that until I think yesterday after they won. Somebody made a post about it and showed the clip, and they were like, he was right. He did call it out. But I guess my mom test doesn't work on you, though.
Yeah, the second DeMarcus to leave the Cowboys and win a Super Bowl in his first year elsewhere. So DeMarcus Ware did it with the Broncos. So
yeah, well said.
Not a great trend for Cowboys fans, but I'm sure that makes a lot of people happy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The JSN thing, I didn't even know that he was kind of known like that. I mean, I guess in your specific scenario it makes sense, but it just feels like
a lot of people would. I don't think a lot of moms would, to be honest. So I think the mom test would work on that. I just am fortunate enough to have, and if mom you're listening, a great mom who pays attention to sports when her kids are watching.
I love to hear that. I will admit I do support that. But as far as like, I'm just thinking about the last couple Super Bowls we've had. I think a lot of moms would know Mahomes and Kelsey. Kelsey for kind of a different reason, but nonetheless, I think they know Jason Kelsey sort of just because of the relation. So when you think about it like in those terms, that was my biggest concern about going to the Super Bowl as far as the ratings go. And obviously the Super Bowl is like the most viewed nationally televised thing like in the world. Year after year we see this. But if somehow the Broncos end up winning that game against the Patriots, and we have a Broncos-Seahawks Super Bowl, how do you explain that to casual fans? Like that was just my thought that I had, and I guess I'll leave that to you if you wanna like chew on that. I'm springing this on you, but it's like, how do you explain if somehow the Broncos win with Jared Stidham, and it's a Stidham versus Darnold matchup? How do you get casual fans to watch that game?
I'd say I'm going to take this as a marketer of the game perspective.
Yes. Yeah.
I'd say you'd have to market it as two quarterbacks who were supposed to end up being faces of the franchise and weren't, are battling for a Super Bowl. Jared Stidham in New England, him and Jimmy Garoppolo were the ones that were battling to try to take over Tom Brady's spot. Didn't get there. Either one of them didn't do it. And then Stidham's just been a backup everywhere else. He went to Vegas to try to get a spot, couldn't do it, and ended up with Denver and was not the happiest when Bo Nix came over and started right away. And for Darnold, we all know the story of Sam Darnold, that like third overall pick, just never found a home. Kevin O'Connell might be a quarterback whisperer in Minnesota to fix him, but I think that's the only way you could describe it and tell them to expect a whole heck of a lot of defense. If you're getting an older fan to watch it, they'll probably love it. A younger fan, they wouldn't, but you'd have to go on the story of two quarterbacks that would have played and then the defense.
I think that's well said. And on the topic of Darnold, I wrote this in the outline, so I might as well do this right now. This is Sam Darnold's career up to this point. All right, starts with the Jets, 3 seasons with them, 13-25 in starts, 45-39 touchdown to interception ratio, and then the whole he's seeing ghost incident, and he becomes the biggest meme in the NFL community for at least a year, if not longer. I'm sure you've seen those memes when that was prominent.
I actually just so I saw it back then, but I kind of forgot about it, and probably 20 minutes before I hopped on the Zoom, I saw another edit of the I See Ghosts.
That's, yeah. I mean, I think that he got to prove that one wrong, luckily. And then after that, 2 seasons with the Panthers, they go 8-9, 16-16 touchdown to reception ratio. He starts the last 6 games of the 22 season when the Panthers were 3-8, and then he goes 4-2 in the last 6. Like, all things considered, that's really impressive, and it's just kind of swept under the rug because they were already out of the playoffs at that point. Goes to my 49ers. He's Purdy's backup. Purdy has an awesome year. Darnold doesn't really play. Then he goes to the Vikings. McCarthy gets hurt. That everyone's thinking, okay, this season's a wash for Minnesota. Darnold steps up. They go 14-3. Top 10 offense. They're beating good teams, but they couldn't beat the Rams in the regular season and then in the wild card. And I wrote it as Sam Darnold kind of turns into a pumpkin. Like 245 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, low passer rating. And then this year, he goes 14-3 again with second-year head coach Mike Macdonald, third best offense, really good stats over all across the board, 4,000 passing yards, probably his best overall season. And I think we were expecting him to turn into a pumpkin again, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts? Like, they're playing the divisionals. What did you see out of Sam Darnold? Were you expecting that sort of thing to happen with Minnesota that happened here, or how were you feeling about it?
So my thoughts on Sam Darnold date back to 2 years ago, when he was in San Francisco. I actually got the opportunity to speak to Sam a little bit, because I didn't go down this year, but 2 prior years I went down to Super Bowl Radio Row, got to interview a bunch of cool athletes, celebrities, NFL players, you name it. And I actually got to speak to Sam a little bit about how being a backup has helped him. And back then he said he's learning how to deal with it, and he is learning how to be in a winning organization. Then obviously, he ends up in Minnesota. He gets to the Super Bowl with San Francisco, ends up in Minnesota, has a great year. But if I had the chance to speak with him again, I'd ask him if he felt the same as he did in San Francisco with Minnesota. He won games. He learned how to win in San Francisco. He did it in Minnesota. However, winning games in the regular season, we can see, is a whole heck of a lot different than winning games in the postseason. And being around it and sitting behind someone that's winning games, I think can only do you so much. You can learn how to win games, but you're never going to actually be able to perform to do the big game. And we saw that in Minnesota, and I think that was probably one of the best things to happen for him, is Seattle didn't lose confidence and still paid him what he was going to make before that game. And I mean, the rest is history. I think Seattle found a player who, in the last 2 years, really just exceeded everyone's expectations and found lightning in a bottle.
I think that's well said. I mean, it's when I look back at all the numbers and all the times he gets to start and you got a good roster around him, he is a very good quarterback, and it's kind of shocking that no one saw it sooner. I know the Super Bowl wasn't his best performance by any means. We've seen him play much better. But in your opinion, has there ever been a quarterback that was kind of such a late bloomer, like had such an unorthodox career up to this point?
he's basically thrown out like no one's even thinking about him after his time with the Jets, and then he's all of a sudden he's a Super Bowl winner. If you told me that 4 years ago, I would never believe you. I think that's fair to say. So if you can think of another guy who's similar, I can't think of someone this late in their career that kind of did that. It's not that late, but you know, quarterback lifespans can go.
Yeah, I mean, I think Darnold's just such an interesting case because of what he was supposed to be coming out of USC. He was supposed to be this guy that was going to turn the Jets around and didn't do it. I mean, late bloomers, I mean, you can look no further than Kurt Warner. I mean, that's just a whole different story, though, of Kurt Warner. No similarities to Sam Darnold in the story, but just strictly got his start in the NFL late. That's really it. Other than that, the only one that's similar and Darnold obviously didn't win MVP or anything is Rich Gannon.
Yeah. That's a good point. I was thinking about that.
But he was 34 with his MVP, something like that. So that's really the only one that you could look of and be of comparison. Just in Gannon's case, he won an MVP. Darnold didn't. So I guess those two, if you really think about it, would be the only really late bloomers we've seen. This and Darnold's really not late, right? Like sometimes it just takes a quarterback that long. Geno wasn't good. Like he wasn't, and he had 2 good years with Seattle. So I think it's an awesome story and an interesting case with Darnold. But now it all matters what he does next year, right? Like I hate to say that one game after he just won the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
and
the whole day, yeah.
Quarterback to the one of the best teams I've seen in a couple years. But all right, you won one. Now are you truly going to be the franchise quarterback, or are we going to, in 2 years when your contract's up, have to go find someone else?
I think that's well said. And listen, I'm a San Francisco 49ers fan. I've seen that team up close multiple times this season.
Mm-hmm.
Last two meetings were brutal. Like that first game, I think it was the last week of the season when we saw them us just get steamrolled by them. We scored 3 points. I was like, okay, yeah, these guys are serious. All I heard was all this talk about how great the Seahawks are. And I'll be real, I wasn't expecting it. I didn't expect them to be that good. And then I watched the game. I sat down and watched it, and I'm like, oh shit, they're right. And that's not a good feeling at all to have. But it was kind of awesome to see such a well put together team just kind of dominate a really talented 49ers team that was injured and banged up, whatever. You can say that, but I don't like to use that excuse. But just steamroll us, like all things considered, offensively and defensively. And then we meet each other in the playoffs again, and then it's sort of the same story. Like it feels like this team was unstoppable, and the Rams gave them kind of a hard time in the conference championship. But other than that, like it felt like these guys were unstoppable, and nobody was going to really catch up with them. And the Darnold thing, it's like he was the favorite to win Super Bowl MVP, so it seemed like people believed that he was going to have this dominant performance, as did I. Like if I don't sports gamble, I use the odds simply to kind of get an idea of where we're at as a society and how we're feeling about the game. But I would have put money on Darnold. I don't, but I would have, because I think he was just that good. And again, the Seahawks, and like you said, like you made a really good point, is like what is he going to do next year? And it sucks because we have to talk about this right the day after the Super Bowl happens, but it's a good
That's going to be a headline in a week from now is every big journalistic platform, outlook, anything is going to ask the question, and can Darnold get them there again next year? That's going to be the question that everyone talks about, especially now. This is kind of the lull area of football. You don't have the draft until the end of April, so it feels a little bit too early for these analysts to be talking about the draft and getting really in depth on it. You really just have the rumors that you hear about big name free agents and talking about what players are going to do next year. So that 1,000% will be a headline moving forward, probably within the next week.
it kind of felt like the same narrative as we had with Jalen Hurts a year ago of today, basically. Is basically the same thing. And we saw kind of how the Eagles season panned out. It wasn't what we were expecting, I don't think. I think I was expecting I don't know, I expected them to be a little more competitive than they were. There's a lot of things that go into that, obviously. But I think you're right. And this is like this, I think the worst time, and the week before the Super Bowl is kind of the other worst time because you're just covering the Super Bowl one game for 2 weeks, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really only so much you can say about that one game. That's probably the second worst time for football fans. Now is the worst. Like, as you said, we still have 2 months until we can really talk about the draft and have a real good idea of what teams are doing. So, yeah, it's going to be something we talk about. And the Seahawks are in a weird spot, and I'm sure you've heard the team is being sold.
Mm-hmm.
You have Walker, who's a free agent. People are going to talk about Darnold. Is he legit? Obviously, you win a Super Bowl, and I guess it doesn't prove anything anymore. This is just the way of the league. So, what's next? In your opinion, what is next for the Seahawks going into next year?
You have to find every way in your power to retain this defense.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, whatever cap strap you need to deal with, you need to suck the life out of this defense until it doesn't work anymore, because this truly is the Legion of Boom reincarnated, and it could end up being better than them if they win another one. This is how good this defense is, in my opinion. But you have to do everything that being said, Reek Woolen probably won't be back next year. If I had to guess, I think he might get paid a little bit too much money from a bottom feeder team in the NFL that is in need for a corner. So I don't know if Tariq Woolen will be back next year. Walker, again, is the tough part, but you have to find a way to just run everything back. And I'm not really the biggest fan of just running a team back no matter what, because the Cowboys do it every damn year.
The Niners do that a lot too, so yeah. I get your pain.
I'm not the biggest fan of doing that. But you just had 3 losses, but one of the most dominant performances of any team throughout a whole regular season and postseason than we've seen teams do in the past. I think the only answer is the owners need to find a way to keep this squad together for as long as they can until it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I mean, and like you said, like running it back is almost never the best move, but I feel like in this case with a team that's been so dominant and they basically can do everything, it feels like sometimes, I think it's a very specific scenario in which they must try to run it back as much as they can. And Tariq Woolen, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't heard. I know the rumors are going to start kicking up now about where he's going to go next, but we'll see what they can do. I mean, I think it'd be a mistake for him to leave this team. I think they love him. I think the fans do love him there. I think he was such an impactful player, especially in this game. He was making, I thought he was just key over the whole playoffs. And all I can think about is I think you got to bring this team back, and that's kind of going to be the narrative, like you said. Like you're basically nailed it on the head there, and I'm kind of just echoing what you said, but because you're right, like this is the narrative they're going to be doing for the next couple months. I kind of want to take a little detour to talk about the halftime show. I'll be real, I did not watch the halftime show, not because I'm against Bad Bunny or anything. I had a volleyball tournament yesterday, and I was on the way home. So I did catch the first half and all that, but by the time I got home, the halftime show was just starting, whatever. I don't know if you had any opinions you want to share about the halftime show, and if you had any dream performers that you'd like to see, even if it's a repeat, I'd love to hear about it, to be honest. It's kind of like icebreakers we're doing now, but that's okay.
Thoughts on the halftime show? Nothing negative at all. About Bad Bunny or anything like that would ever come out of my mouth. He's the biggest artist in the world. But for the sense of not getting political like the world wants with halftime, I'm going to stay away. Not that I think he shouldn't have been a halftime performer. You just hear a lot of, and I'll say this, you just hear a lot of idiots nowadays that are so strongly opinionated over things that don't matter. Like, it's a 15-minute performance. it doesn't matter who's doing it, and and it's some of the people that truly don't watch the halftime show anyway. So like I didn't care that it was Bad Bunny. Now with that being said, I don't mind it. Like I liked Kendrick Lamar. I like Usher. I listened to those too. I would have liked to see Post Malone. I think he would do a good job. That would be cool. I like Post Malone. So it like my only thoughts on Bad Bunny was I know a couple songs. I just don't listen to his music, and I think that's fair. But when you had the people just complaining about him not being an American, like that's just where it's stupid. For what point? For a 10 to 15 minute performance that you're not going to watch, who cares?
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I actually was looking at the Spotify numbers. I know Spotify is not the end all be all for popularity. 2025, he's the most streamed artist in the world. 2024, he's the third most. In 2023, he's the second most. So I think what you're saying is true. Like, I think it got so blown out of proportion. And I think what the NFL is doing is very smart by getting the most popular artist, not just in America, but in the world. They're expanding the game. Like, they're trying to go global.
They want to reach every single country. That's what they want to do. And they did that with the halftime performance. And also, I saw something this morning on social media. I didn't look up after to see if it was true, but this was the most watched halftime performance in Super Bowl history.
I believe that's true.
Like, they clearly did something right with the entire public. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think they might go after Antarctica next. Like, I think they're that serious about trying to reach every corner of the world, and it's smart. I think people don't understand from that business aspect. Do I think Roger Goodell is banging Bad Bunny all the time? Probably not, but I think he's a smart businessman, and I think he knows what he's doing. So what's so different about this compared to like Paul McCartney, who's not an American, doing the halftime show 20 some odd years ago? To me, I don't get the difference.
No.
Like, exactly. So I think the Super Bowl halftime show, it's not something I ever really cared about because it's not like I'm at the game and experiencing it, but it gives us a good landmark of where we are as a culture, where like Kendrick Lamar last year is going to be remembered because the Drake beef and all that stuff, which I don't know how you feel about Drake, but it was a very prominent thing, a prominent theme that we had going on at the time. And he was probably the biggest rapper in the world. I'm a big fan of Kendrick. I think he's probably one of the greatest rappers I've ever listened to. I think it just makes sense. And then next year, whoever they do next year, I have a couple names written down for the next few years. I should just start with this one, Drake. Drake to me is the one that if they don't do it by now, I don't think they ever will, but I think it could still happen. I don't know if you have any opinion on Drake that you want to share.
I love Drake, man. There's not really artists that I don't like. Like, I don't necessarily understand when people are complaining about a certain artist and, oh, I hate his music. Okay, don't listen to it. You don't need to just sit there and complain about it. Like, if you don't like his music, don't listen to it. But that being said, on my end, there's not a genre I wouldn't listen to. I might not know who the hell's singing the song, but that, like, I'm not, if I don't like it, I'll just change the channel. So I've never understood the beef, the regular, normal people like us beefing with celebrity artists that we have no control over. Now, if they do something horrible as a person, then I understand that. But there's not really an artist that I would, you could tell me that was going to be the halftime performer that I would be like, oh, damn, I don't want that.
Yeah, I honestly agree. I mean, and there's been halftime shows of artists that either I wasn't really familiar with or I wasn't like a huge fan, and I watched and I enjoyed. Like The Weeknd was probably the example that comes to mind first. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed his halftime show performance a few years ago. I was surprised Metallica never happened because I felt like they were like one of the biggest bands in the world in the 90s, and the 80s. And I just learned today that they haven't. So I don't know if that will ever happen because I feel like they're all, old, but that would be cool. And then I think I have two that will probably happen within the next 5 years. Taylor Swift. Would you agree? Yeah. And I think Zach Bryan is on his way up to that stardom. I don't know what the consensus is outside of like his fan base is, but I feel like he's probably the biggest country artist right now. Maybe is that fair? Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Maybe Morgan Wallen. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, country's just so different now too. So it's hard to really. I mean, Post Malone's in country and had one of the highest selling country albums ever. So it's very different to say. Yeah, I think Swift will. Taylor Swift, the only interesting one is now that she's truly married to Travis Kelce. There might be some kind of conflict of interest the NFL doesn't want to touch.
Mm.
But yeah, I could see her happening. I think Post Malone will happen eventually. And then Zach Bryan would make sense. And or Morgan Wallen, one of those, yeah.
Yeah. I have one more question, and we'll move on from this subject, because I actually want to ask you about Mike Vrabel. But, and I may be wrong on this, because maybe this is showing my lack of knowledge of current music, but is it getting to a point where we're starting to run out of major musicians that have not already done the halftime show? Because I feel like we've played the greatest hits, like Coldplay is still huge. They're still as huge as they've ever been. And obviously there's a lot of guys that are not alive anymore, like Prince and Michael Jackson. I feel like we've touched almost every major artist, and we kind of have to reach a little bit. Taylor Swift is not a reach. I don't think Post Malone or Zach Bryan's a reach. But are we getting to that point, in your opinion, that we're kind of running out of superstars, so to speak?
Yeah, I think look no further than Usher doing it 2 years ago. Like, if you told me Usher did it a couple times 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. But 2 years ago was a little interesting. So I think you're getting there, and I also think you're getting to people are such a, and myself included, is we have a strong thing for nostalgia. And like so I went home for Super Bowl this weekend, and on my hour and a half drive back up to St. Bonaventure, I was listening to all the things from the 2010-ish to 2014, just because that's what I felt like doing that day, because nostalgia makes me feel like a kid again. It makes everyone feel like a kid again. And some of those songs I truly believe are just better than, and I'm a big fan of rappers nowadays. I'm a big fan of artists nowadays too. Love Lil Baby, love NBA Youngboy, love almost any rapper.
Did not see Youngboy coming from you.
Yeah,
okay.
I love almost any rapper you can name right now. I love almost any country artist you can name right now. So hell, I'll even say I like Tate McRae too.
Okay.
and I just really like her music.
Right.
But I do think that is a very good point, that we might be running out of artists, but I think people love a nostalgia factor to everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. It kind of reminded me, to bring it up again, the Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Mary J. Blige, maybe a little bit late,
Yeah.
Just probably 15 years too late, but I think people enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. I didn't know every song, but just a thought. It was just a thought I had off the top of my head. Now, I want to ask you about Mike Vrabel. Why do you think nobody believed in him? Because he was not a coach for a whole year. And it seemed like the only people interviewing him was the Patriots, and then there was rumors of the Jets. I don't know how official that was. But in hindsight, it makes no sense. But why do you think that Mike Vrabel wasn't working for a year?
I think you got to look at some of the coaching markets that were out there too. I don't remember who was in need of a head coach, but one of the most sought after jobs is the Cowboys job. And Mike Vrabel is not a Jerry Jones guy. Jerry, this is gonna sound like a terrible way to use this, but Jarrett likes to be a puppet master. Jerry likes to be a puppet master. And he's kind of going away from that now, with Shoddy, but Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy being your head coaches. Jerry had all the say in everything. So that being one of the biggest coaching markets at the time, Vrabel was never going to have the opportunity to step back into football if that was the biggest one, because that would never happen. I don't remember who else was in need for head coaches. Oh, I'm trying to think of first-year head coaches this year. Canales isn't a first year. This is his second, right?
Is the Buccaneers guy first year or no?
No, Bowles has been around. I don't really remember who was in the need for head coaches, but I think the market was a lot slimmer 2 years ago or last year when he took the year off versus going into this year. But Vrabel was also a Patriot too, so there might have been some kind of conversations before saying when we need our next head coach, it's going to be you. But I think people that also go to Tennessee get a bad rap coaching wise. He wasn't really given anything in Tennessee, and those Tennessee teams still had the same heart every single game that this Patriots team did. And I think with Vrabel, the world nowadays is hard to hire a defensive-minded coach because everyone loves coaches that are obsessed with X's and O's on offense, not, all right, we're just gonna do everything right on the defensive end, and I'll have my offensive coordinator figure it out. So that could be a knock, and he's a strong personality, right? He's the definition of a leader of men, and not to speculate anything, but sometimes as hundreds of millions / billionaire owners, it's hard to have another leader of men around almost as an alpha. And I hate using that word, but sometimes egos get in the way. Jerry Jones, Jimmy Johnson, Jimmy, a leader of men, ego got in the way. So sometimes egos are a true thing, and I think the patch job falling in his lap was just perfect, and it was the right thing for him. Not probably sucked in the moment, but he's looking back now. It was the right thing for him not to be wanted a year ago.
Yeah, I just while you asked what you're thinking about it, I looked up the coaches, the first year coaches from this season. Tell me what you noticed about most of these, not all of them, but most of these.
Kellen Moore, first year coach this year, head coach this year.
Yep. Ben Johnson with the Bears, offensive mind.
Mm-hmm.
Liam
Aaron
Cohen
Glenn should be the only first year head coach this year that was defensive minded, I believe.
Yeah, Pete Carroll.
Of two, maybe.
Pete Carroll with the Raiders, who's not obviously there anymore.
That's
Aaron
stupid.
Glenn with the Jets.
Yep.
And then Schottenheimer with the Cowboys, and then Liam Cohen, like I said. So a lot of those guys, most of those guys, like you said, offensive line, that's a really good point that you made. And that's why I specifically brought that list up, because I think you're right. Like, I didn't think of it that way, but I think you're right. And I think it worked out for Vrabel because his coaching style ended up working. Again, we can talk about all the nitpicky stuff about the schedule and whatever, but it did work. He got to the Super Bowl. He did what he was supposed to do as a head coach in your first year. I don't know the numbers, I don't know the history, but I'm sure it's almost impossible or very rare for a first-year head coach to bring his team to the Super Bowl. I don't know if that's
it's
happened
rare
at
for
all.
a first-year head coach to even have a winning record, let alone take them to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's no exactly, and I think you're right. And on the flip side of that, we can talk about Mike Macdonald, and I listed some of the guys that are kind of the next gen, the new gen coaches, the head coaches that are 40 and under. It's seemingly becoming a new trend. So I'm going to list some of the guys: Kellen Moore, Mike Macdonald, Ben Johnson, Sean McVay, Liam Cohen, Kevin O'Connell, Shane Steichen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is that how you pronounce
Colts
it?
head coach. Yep. Shane Steichen.
Mike LaFleur, I think he just got picked up, and then Clint Kubiak. A lot of those guys, if not all of them, are offensive-minded head coaches, like you mentioned. And then there's some guys that are just outside that, like a couple guys are right outside that field. But do you see this as a trend that's going to continue, where it's the majority of the league is these young offensive-minded head coaches, or are you just seeing this as something that's happening right now and maybe will change in 3 years?
Before I go into that, the fact that Sean McVay is still under 40 is absurd.
Yeah, that was the thing that stuck out to me too. He's 39.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I think everyone would love to have an offensive minded because I think there's better defensive coordinators around football that are just better at straight being a defensive coordinator. Like Raheem Morris should have never been a head coach. And he'll be an awesome defensive coordinator again. But I think just the word young is what everyone's looking for now. Unless you're a storied franchise like the Steelers that went and got a hometown guy in Mike McCarthy. Still offensive minded there though. But I think it's just young. Like I hate to keep using the Cowboys as an example, but they're doing a lot of things that fit industry trends. And Christian Parker, young defensive minded, new DC this year. He'll be a 1-year DC. He'll go be a head coach somewhere next year. But this is where you could see, because some of these guys are so much younger, that they just have to have a better relationship with players moving forward too, as a requirement. Because now it's outside of offensive minded, it's being a player's coach that a lot of teams are looking for, like Vrabel. Kellen Moore, not so much. I experienced him in Dallas, and that was one good year of offense from Kellen Moore. But a lot of these guys are becoming player coaches, and you see the relationship being less business-like. Like, let's take a look at Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, right? Because that's the best example of how long their tenure was together. I'm sure we didn't see a lot of things behind the scenes, and they cared for each other a lot, but it always just felt so businesslike. Like, it didn't feel like, or they, like, obviously they hugged, they celebrated together, they did all that. But they, in front of the camera, just felt like a business. As to where you look at coaches like Al Harris, who is a defensive backs coach for the Bears right now, who will probably be a defensive coordinator in the next 2 years. When he was with Dallas, the corners felt like they were friends, not just teammates. Like they were family, not just teammates. They weren't in it for a business, they were in it for each other. Now, the Bears corners, what a turnaround from last year. And now he's the Bears defensive back coach. They got Nashawn Wright, who wasn't even supposed to be drafted, and the Cowboys took him in the 3rd round to have 5 interceptions this year. It feels like being young and trying to make football more enjoyable in front of a camera and as a team rather than a business is what a lot of coaches are looking for now.
I think you're right. And then you have some of the head coaches that go out of their way to kind of get assimilated with the players' culture, like Urban Meyer.
Oh, Urban.
Just that was just a joke I had.
Urban.
As far as we started talking about relationships with players, I immediately thought,
Urban.
It's a good fit for this joke, Urban Meyer. But I think you're right. To be all joking aside, I do think you're correct. I did not know that about the defensive back coach. That's a really good, interesting story. I'll have to do more research on that.
Al Harris turned. The years that the Cowboys, like when Trayvon Diggs was at his best and Deron Bland was at his best, Al Harris was their defensive back coach, and they looked like they had fun playing football. And on the sideline, they'd be all happy together, cheerful together, no stone faces. Felt like they were definitely friends outside of the facility. Definitely a mentor outside the facility, and now the Bears have an awesome secondary too. Same leadership guy. Christian Parker, I'll use as another Cowboys example. Awesome secondary. Reed and Cooper DeJean were in an interview the other day on Radio Row saying how much they love CP and him as a person instead of just as a coach. So I think that's something moving forward to take a look at.
Yeah, well said. Any other kind of wrap-up thoughts before we just kind of close it out for the day? About the Super Bowl, about kind of anything related to the NFL going into the offseason now?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting offseason for sure for almost everyone. There's one question that I don't think we got to on the outline that I want to bring up, and it was, which team is more likely to return out of these two? Because I saw
I must have missed that.
I saw a ChatGPT article, like they predicted a bunch of stuff, and then all these people were doing stuff like that too. And I think they both might have an equal shot of never returning in the next like 10 years. If you're Seattle and you cannot retain some of these free agents and Sam Darnold takes a dip in production, and I know those are ifs, right? But next season's always an if. That's kind of scary and you might be screwed. As for the Patriots, you got there with the easiest schedule ever. You now have to play a first place finish in your division schedule rather than a cakewalk. And you did it with no Patrick Mahomes being there. You didn't have to play Bo Nix. You didn't have to play Lamar Jackson. You avoided Josh Allen. It only gets harder. So if I had to choose one, I'd say the Seahawks would likely get back there first. But they both could easily just never see another one with these teams that they have.
That's a really not the take I was expecting to have was to bring up neither team making it. I'm actually going to take the other side. I'm actually going to say New England. I think everything you're saying is absolutely true about New England, and this is not coming from a place of fandom. It's coming from a place of hatred, but I still could see it happening only because despite everything and all the lucky breaks that New England caught, as I mentioned, they were still way ahead of schedule. And again, like you said, they still had to beat these teams in order to get there. And they have a lot of like shining pieces. But for every Will Campbell, there's a Drake May and a Christian Gonzalez who are both phenomenal this season, especially Gonzalez. I looked at the stats for him in the
he was great yesterday.
Just unbelievable in that first half.
He's the best corner in the NFL in my eyes, and I don't know if there's anyone else that could sway my opinion. So
I think only Patrick Surtain is probably. I actually know a lot of Broncos because my dad's a Broncos fan. So every Broncos fan that's on national television, we sit down and we watch it. He stuck out, but Gonzalez was unreal last night, and especially that first half, holding Seattle just field goals is not easy because they're a very good offense. But I think again, flaws like Will Campbell, like an aging receiving core to some extent, like Diggs, those are flaws, but again, they have a bright future, and if you keep the nucleus together, Vrabel, May, Gonzalez, some of these other pieces, you keep that together, I think not next year or the year after, but I think down the road, I think they can still grab one and make another sneaky play. Again, it's not every year these conferences are so wide open that it feels like this year.
Right.
Like missing some of the best 6 quarterbacks in the league in the playoffs kind of puts an asterisk on it to some extent. But it happens sometimes, and you kind of just have to roll with the punches. So if you have an opening, I think New England would be the team to take it. And what you're saying about Vrabel's true. Like the so-called alphaness, or however you say it, in him as a coach, he seems like the type of guy to go his way and grab it. But I think what you're saying about Seattle is interesting. And to your point, it does also depend on the ownership and what happens there. And do you know anything about
I don't know anything about the new owners. I know nothing about the new owners. I knew a bunch about John Snyder. I think what he did was for his kid and I think their whole story is inspiring. If you don't know much about their story, for the listeners, go listen to everything. But I don't know much about what the ownership is going to be. I didn't read too much into it. But yeah, this owner could just come in and not spend money. So it's not easy to end up going through an ownership change.
That's my concern. That's pretty much all me and my dad were talking about after the Super Bowl. After everyone left our little gathering, we were the 2 people left watching the post game show, and then Bill Simmons' podcast was live right after, so we listened to that. But that's all we could think about was the new ownership and what the hell they're going to do next. And again, like you said, if they don't spend any money, if a team outbids them for Kenneth Walker and they don't submit another offer, like then what? Like what is the move for Seattle at that point?
Do we know who's buying them? Did they say?
I don't know. That's the thing is
it was what wasn't it like originally owned by Paul Allen or something like that, and then Snyder's their GM, which you never know if you're going to bring a GM back after a new owner.
I don't know if we know officially. I heard some.
See, the first article looked up right here is who owns the Seattle Seahawks. It's complicated. That's the
We're
headline.
good. Okay, good start. So that's never really what you want to hear after winning a Super Bowl. Is that what you're going through is complicated? But I think it'll. I mean, it's going to have to happen pretty soon because once we get into the offseason, a lot of things have to go down with just teams in general. So I guess this is something we got to figure out. But the question is going to be there, and we can talk about this till we're blue in the face. But we won't have an answer till we have an answer, right? Like we will never know the true answer to this. I'm actually thankful that you brought that piece up. I must have missed that in the outline. Did I miss anything else? Did I get everything?
No, everything was hit. Two more things on this topic though.
Please.
So Seahawks been owned by Paul Allen. Well, RIP, but the trust fund for it. So no new owner as of now. I guess it's just going right up for sale. But it's hard to retain everyone after an ownership. So John Snyder, again, I encourage you to look up the GM story of John Snyder. But is he going to be back as GM for sure, no matter what, with these new owners? Are they going to want to continue to spend money that they have in the cap rather than like be 90 million under and not have to pay? So is that going to be a question moving forward? And then the Pats being ahead of schedule. Did we say the same thing about the Bengals a couple years ago?
Good point. I heard that argument a lot too. But yes, go on, please.
And I know Joe Burrow is the most injury-ridden quarterback in the NFL, but they were so early that Zach Taylor still has a job. Like, we were expecting Joe Burrow and the Bengals to just always be a fixture of the postseason and make it back, and we were like, wow, they're probably a year ahead, but they're going to win a Super Bowl 4 years later, and we're still sitting here and we haven't seen the Bengals since. So it just goes to show how being ahead of schedule is nice, and I'll use a baseball analogy here. And a comparison, I am a Guardians fan. 2016, we were not supposed to be there as the Indians.
Remember that?
Everyone said the Indians are going to be back. Never made it back. 10 years later, still haven't made it back. So I guess that just goes to show how hard it is and truly difficult it is to predict if a team's going to go back.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan, so I can attest to the fact that we made the finals against Boston. So you already knew I was getting a lot of shit if we lost that, living in New England. And we lost in 5, in very ugly 5 games. And then we blew up the team, basically, within the next couple years. So, and I felt like we were ahead of schedule. Like, I felt like we beat some really good teams. We beat a really good OKC team that we probably shouldn't have beat. And now here we are with Anthony Davis just being traded, and then whatever. There's whatever. Everything that happened with Dallas has been. I've had several podcasts on this feed just mentally breaking down over what the hell Nico Harrison was thinking, and he's no longer working for us anymore, which is good. Either way, I think you're right, and that's a really good point. But there are examples where it felt like a quarterback got there kind of early, and then they did end up getting back and winning. And I can see that happening to Burrow. I can see it happening to May.
Yeah.
I think my favorite example is probably John Elway, where he makes a Super Bowl, gets crushed by the 49ers. And then they at the end of his career, he wins 2 in a row. The very tail end. My dad's, again, a Broncos fan. I watched the Netflix documentary about it, learned a lot. And that was what happened. Nobody thought, he kind of got written off a little bit. Who's to say that doesn't happen to Burrow? It kind of happened to Stafford, although Stafford never made a Super Bowl prior to his initial one.
Never even got a chance.
Never got even really that close to begin with. Like you said, yeah, that's a good point. But it's kind of hard to. It's not like a one size fits all thing. I think you are correct. Like you are making very good points, but the NFL is so weird. And both Burrow and May, although Burrow to a lesser extent, are both so young that this could. In 5 years from now, we could look back and say, boy, we were wrong. Like, that could happen. But those are very valid points. Any other thoughts on between the Seahawks and the Patriots' future? Because the Patriots, I think Patriots have a lot more to do this offseason.
Yeah, they do. It's not easy. Years of repetitive success, no matter what. Both teams could come out next year and just go 9-8. Like, who knows? Like, both teams truly could. Seahawks also play in the best division in football. So, and that division's not really taking any harm right now. Stafford said he'll be back. Yikes. The Niners are going to be healthy again.
Well, we'll see, but yes.
Right, knock on wood, right? But they should be healthy again. And then the Cardinals are just the Cardinals. But they're going to be in every game if they play Jacoby Brissett every game. So they could sneak something to where it screws a playoff team. So the Seahawks, it's going to be really tough to do what they did again this year. And the Pats, you're fine. The Jets, you don't got to worry about the Jets or the Dolphins. I mean, if the Dolphins really think they're going to run out Quinn Ewers and be fine, yikes. But you have Josh Allen with the new head coach. Granted, it's his OC, his first-time head coach. So I think the Patriots have a lot more. I think they have an easier way in the division, but a lot more uncertainty moving forward because they were ahead of schedule. At least a lot of these Seahawks guys are maintained through contracts, but they do have a couple free agents, so they know what they have to do.
Well, it's that, and also the conference is so uncertain. Like, do the Chiefs? How do the Chiefs look next year? Is something that we can talk about till we're blue in the face, but like, there's a lot of uncertainty there. There's also a lot of uncertainty with the Bengals and all these other teams, Ravens too, that all have kind of new looks, or they're going to have new looks in the offseason that we don't know about yet. I just feel like the conference is going to be very strong next year, and this is a very down year for their conference. And next year, who knows what it's going to look like, right? So I think you make really good points for both. If I had to guess, I'm going to say the Patriots would have a harder time getting back there.
Yeah, just their schedule is going to be outrageous next year, and the NFL is going to be. I don't know what it is. It's probably released by now, but it's going to be difficult on both sides. It's difficult to do anything in professional sports, let alone do it twice.
Yeah, I do know. All I know is that the Broncos are playing at Gillette, so the Bo Nix has a little bit of extra fuel in that fire. I do know that only because my dad will be going to that game. That's the only reason I know about that. So I'm excited about that. See that, and hopefully Nix can get his revenge. Yeah. Any last thoughts?
Nah, man, I think we hit everything. This was really fun. So thank you again for having me on.
Thank you for coming out of retirement for this podcast. This was a good time. I think we gelled really well, like right away. So
for sure,
I'd love to have you back, or maybe join you and your brother if you guys ever do end up reviving. Either way. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us. All the listeners, all the watchers at home, thank you very much. I've been your host, Connor Lewis, signing off.